some leaders were here, some were not here. The national office bearers of Cosatu that are not here have been deployed already to provinces. So the ones who are here are the only ones remaining in the province of Gauteng. We just wanted to put that out of the way. Next to me, I have Comrade Chance Zobi, who is the member of the SACP Central Committee and Politburo. And next to him is Comrade Zingiswalosi, who is the second Deputy President of Cosatu. In the middle, I've got Comrade Benjani, Cosatu General Secretary. Next to him, I've got Comrade Soli Africa Mabaila, the first Deputy General Secretary of the SACP. And on the far right, I've got Comrade Soli Pet, Cosatu Deputy General Secretary. I'm going to hand over to the General Secretary of Cosatu. He will take us through the statement. We will give you an opportunity to ask questions. I want to point something out. It's going to be a very short media briefing. We do hope that we will only have one round. We will accommodate one-on-one interviews afterwards because of a very tight schedule that we are running. Thank you. Congratulations.
Thank you. Good morning, Comrade. This is a joint statement by ourselves and the party. And it as follows. The Congress of South African Trade Unions and the South African Communist Party are very happy with the response from the workers regarding tomorrow's national strikes against the state capture and corruption. Workers, community and civil society organizations have made it very clear that they will be joining the Cosatu marches tomorrow all across the country. We continue to urge all workers across the board to put their petty sectarian differences aside and join the strikes tomorrow. This is a legally protected strike under Section 77 of the Labour Relations Act that allow all workers in South Africa, irrespective of their union affiliation, to draw their labour and join the strikes tomorrow. This strike is about sending a message to both government and private sectors that as workers and citizens who are tired of corruption, who are standing up tomorrow against the cancer of corruption that is eroding our gains and also undermining our democracy. The recent poverty and unemployment statistics are shameful and represent a crisis of leadership in the country. South Africa is currently struggling with a real unemployment rate of 38%, with a close to 10 million people struggling to get jobs and 17 million people on welfare. The recent data by Statistics South Africa report shows that out of the population of 56 million, around 13.8 million people are now living below the food poverty or poverty line of 17 rand 38 cents per person per day. It also shows that more than 30 million people out of the 56 millions are by and large poor. According to the Minister of Economic Development, corruption costs the South African gross domestic product at least 27 billion rand annually, as well as the loss of 76,000 jobs that will otherwise have been created. The 2015 to 2016 Auditor General's report shows the regular expenditure has increased by nearly 40% since the 2013 to 14 to 46.36 billion. The increase from the previous year was nearly about 80%. It also shows that the fruitless and wasteful expenditure in the year 2015-2016 was 14% higher than the 2013-14 year at 1.37 billion, and was again incurred by the increased number of those audited. The Auditor General's report also shows 1,648 instances of suppliers submitting false declaration of interest as part of the procurement processes that was reported but only 47% of the municipality did not investigate any of the case reported to them. The report also showed that 2015 capture state-owned the report also shows that 2015 reported instances of the employees not declaring interest had even lower investigation rate, with 64% of the municipality not investigating any of the cases. In 2015-16, poor and non-complaint consequence management practices were found to be at 61% of the municipality, an increase from 53% in the previous year. Municipalities with poor consequence management practices are often prone to corruption or fraud as a result of municipality officials not being held accountable. The report also shows that in municipalities, unauthorized expenditure remain almost at the same level as the previous year at almost 13 billion rand. The biggest corruption case in the private sector was revealed in the report by the UN Conference on Trade and Development last year that showed that South African mining companies under-invoiced the taxman to a tune of about 1 trillion rand between 2000 and 2014. This is made worse by the fact that JSE-listed companies are continuing with their investment strike. They are now sitting with more than 700 billion rand in cash deposit in South African banks. This is happening while South Africa is losing roughly about 147 billion from the money that is illegally taken out of the country per year. This is the money that will allow South Africans to accommodate all South African students at the university level for free. We cannot sit back and do nothing when we see a repeat and continuation of what has reversed the freedom of many African countries after independence. Our martyrs did not sacrifice their lives so that greed and corruption can replace our freedom. As if this was not enough, we have been hit by the latest scandal involving disgrace auditing and consultancy firm KPMG. This scandal is a stark reminder of the collusion between the private and public sector in swindling South Africa and destroying our economics and jobs. Thousands of jobs at the KPMG are now at stake because of the corrupt and greedy tendencies of those who are at the top. The road that we see in both the public and private sector is being hidden, abated and endorsed by firms like KPMG. This shows that we have become a kleptocracy and that there are no angels in both the public and the private sector. Cosatu has noted with grave concern the report that the Gupta network is trying to infiltrate and ultimately hijack the PIC so that they can lay their grubby fingers on the workers' retirement savings. We're also concerned to learn that the Minister of Finance, Gupta, is going ahead with his attempt to use the workers' retirement savings to bail out the captured state-owned enterprises or entities. We've already written to the Minister, Malusi Gigaba, asking for an urgent bilateral meeting to discuss the issue that have emerged recently, including the reported attempts by the Gupta network to capture the PIC. When the Minister made his presentation to the CEC, the meeting rejected his plan and made it very clear that it opposed any attempt to invest workers' savings to the captured. We want to see a judicial commission of inquiry investigating the looting of the state-owned enterprises, and we also want to see people prosecuted and sent to jail before we can even discuss the possibility of workers' money invested in these state companies. Will not allow the PIC to be looted the same way that Eskom and other state-owned enterprises have been looted. Will not allow our members' retirement savings to be handed over to Ms. Tutumieni's airline, the South African Airways. Ms. Mieni has been nothing but a one-woman tornado that has created havoc and chaos wherever she has been deployed. Currently, She is working with Minister Nomvula Mkonyane to collapse Umgeni Waters by tearing the rule book to shreds and running the entity like a spaza shop. She cannot be entrusted with workers' retirement saving. Rigorous conditions should be put in place before any entity is granted funding from the PIC. Few months ago, the fates of the 17 million beneficiaries of social grant were facing a bleak future because of corruption and bureaucratic bundling by SASSA and the Department of Social Development. Cosatu finds it shocking to learn that Minister of Social Development, Batabil Dlamini, has asked the parliamentary speaker to rein in what she calls onerous requests by a committee of overseeing the state welfare agent's effort to end and contract with Net1 UPS Technologies to distribute the payment. This misplaced concept is deeply shocking considering that it took the intervention by the Constitutional Court to resolve the bundling by SASSA and the department. We call on the people's representative in Parliament to do their job, and the Parliament Standing Committee on Public Account and the Portfolio Committee should continue to demand accountability and transparency from SASSA. All those entrusted with taxpayers' money should account of step aside because they are not doing anyone any favor. We cannot fight corruption and state capture if we do not acknowledge the South African capital system itself is deeply corrupted system. The current economic system is a symbol by the NDP reproduce rather than address our triple economic or our triple crisis of unemployment, poverty, and inequality. The government's neoliberal policies have weakened the state and allowed the private sector to be in charge of policy formulation. The Treasury continues with its restrictive fiscal policy, which is obsessively focused on achieving budget deficit targets, and the Reserve Bank continues to pursue its inflation target that's excessively restricting the economy on a low growth path. The current economic trends have unleashed very harsh conditions, especially of the working class and the poor, on top of the already severe triple crisis of unemployment, poverty, and inequality. We have already lost 120,000 jobs this year in 2017. And according to Stat SA, of the 546,000 people who have just joined the ranks of the unemployed, approximately 58% were young people aged between 15 and 34. This means that in terms of the expanded definition, we actually faces a crisis of 70% youth unemployment. South Africa is not a poor country, but its citizens are poor because poor governance and as a result of state capture and corruption. The country's fifth administration, as led by the ANC President Zuma, has and continued to preside over economic contradiction and job losses. Corruption has become endemic under this administration. The revelation by the Public Protector report on state capture that show that this current South African administration has been captured and that there is a network of predatory elite that is engaged in looting of state resources. This call for all of us as workers and citizens to stand up and push back against this rot. This strike is about mobilizing against the predatory elite who are pushing for an appointment of Judicial Commission of Inquiry that will help unearth the extent of this rot and help us to ultimately dismantle this network. There must be a process to identify all those involved in the state capture, and they all need to be blacklisted. The asset forfeiture unit must seize the asset of those who are found guilty. We demand that the private and public sector institutions must refuse to deal with predatory elite and in particular cancel all commercial dealings with the implicated individuals. The money that will be recovered should be redirected to implement projects addressing the plight of workers, the working class, and the poor. Lastly, we warn all those employers who will try to intimidate workers for participating in tomorrow's strike, especially the vulnerable workers. We urge all workers to report the incident of intimidation and coercion to the nearest Cosatu offices. This is a legally protected strike, and all workers are encouraged to join the marches all across the country. The time to reclaim the electoral mandate that we gave to the ANC is now. There is no Messiah who will come and rescue us from the state capture and the cancer of corruption, but it is our collective effort that will put a stop to this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Zuma. As I've already indicated, we do hope that we are not going to have a very long media briefing, so we are going to be taking questions. You raise your hand, we acknowledge you, you tell us where you come from and you ask the question. So I'll take the question.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. My name is Stephen. I'm from GateNet for Slav TV. My question, first question rather, is to Mr. Njani. I just wanted to find out, with this march tomorrow, are you also in a way saying to President Zuma that it is time for you to step down now? And the second question would be directed to Mr. Sodi Mabaina. Just your reaction to Makosi Khoza's announcement last week, you know, her decision of resigning from the ANC. Thank you.
We will interpret this as a message that the statement was very clear. Like I said, we are hoping that we're only going to have one round. Govind?
Thank you so much. It's Golden Little, Canadian Guardian newspaper. Could you please identify what the petty sectarian differences are that you referred to in the beginning of your statement, which you're asking workers to put aside? Secondly, you're saying that the chairperson of the SAA board, Mr. Dumieni, is now working with the Minister of Water Affairs, to collapse the Dumieni Water Board. Is this march a march against Mr. Dumieni and SAA and the Minister Nomvula Mokonyane? And which plans did the Central Executive Committee of Cosatu that were presented by Mr. Malusi Gigaba reject? And finally, is the President, Jacob Zuma, part of the predatory elite which you have referred to in the statement? Thank you.
Good, sir.
Okay, thank you. My name is Tsepo Ikane from the SABC. On political issues, there's been reports about developments with regard to the ANC conference around what has been termed as moves to have unity, kind of a consensus leadership ahead of the December conference. Does Cosatu leadership has any position with regard to what has been happening with regard to the mediation or efforts led by Didi Mabuza to actually engage with other alliance partners, including members of the ANC themselves, to have what they term as consensus leadership, given the fact that we know that Cosatu has endorsed Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa to take over from President Jacob Zuma. Thank you.
Hi, it's Samuel Abraham from the Huffington Post. Just want to find out, what exactly do you mean by this time to reclaim the electoral mandate that we gave to the ANC? How will you reclaim this electoral mandate? What exactly do you mean by this?
Okay. Over to leadership.
No, can start.
Oh, okay. Silence.
Ukhona othinte i-cable somewhere, it's no more working. There might be a cable that thing has come out of the connection and have corrupted the whole system. So, ngaphendula.
You are close to the mic.
This one doesn't again.
No, let us proceed.
Okay.
In the meantime.
Okay. There are a number of questions which we'll try to respond to them briefly because they are not part of what we're trying to do today. The issues of consensus leadership of the ANC, we Cosatu have a strong view that if we are talking about that consensus, it should be a consensus based on the traditions that we're talking about. It should be around the deputy president as the leader of that particular consensus. On the issues that we marching against few individual people that we have been mentioning in dealing with those issues, we're marching against the state capture and corruption. And in the process, there will be many people whom will associate with that kind of corruption. And of course, in doing so, we've indicated in our statement that ordinarily, if the local government and the ministers accused of not doing the proper thing, ordinarily will be reporting them to the president. We'll say to President Zuma, remove Minister A, B, and C. But the president has not been able to do that. So in essence, we've lost confidence to the president for him to be able to correct those that reported to him. As such, it goes back to our statement that we think the president is the right time that he must go. So this march is all inclusive. It's about, when we're referring to reclaiming the electoral mandate of the ANC, the electoral mandate of the ANC is people first. It's people development, and for the ANC to be able to do that one, it must be able to deal with the state capture and corruption. Otherwise, it would not be in a position to do anything in terms of that mandate. And we said we have to help the ANC to do that work. And by standing up and indicating that corruption is not only rejected by workers, but is rejected by many South Africans. So others can take now.
All right. Thank you very much. Can I just take, there's one question that was asked by Gavin on what are those sectorial, petty sectorial. We understand and appreciate that workers are coming from different sectors of the economy. You would have ones that are from the public sector, and within the public sector, they are in different workplaces, which the interest may not be the same, and what they are demanding in terms of sectorial issues are not the same. And those are the differences that we acknowledge, that a worker that is employed in a security company and a worker that is employed in a public service by government may not have the same issues that they would be raising. For an example, you are dealing with issues of workers that are earning below 17 rands, 20 rands, which you may find for those that are employed in government, under government employment. So if you are to take a march at times that deals with collective bargaining, mainly focusing on the public sector, you would find a private sector workers organized under a private sector following or participating in that march, because those are sectoral issues that are confronting them at that time. So we're saying let workers tomorrow rise above those sectoral differences and unite on this issue does not choose a sector that a worker belongs to, but it erodes the fiber of South Africa, and those that are at the receiving end of corruption and state capture, negatively so, are workers of this country, irrespective of a sector that you are working in, irrespective of a trade union that you belong to, irrespective of a federation that your union is affiliated to. So hence, this is a call to all workers of this country, including civil society, because if this corruption and state capture is so adverse towards the workers of this country, how much more to those that are not working? How much more to those that are looking for employment? Because the excuse that the private sector makes for them not to come and invest in our country, it is corruption. That some by some of the private sector, they are also part of corruption, because we're saying where there is a corrupter, there is a corruptee, but it is an excuse that they are making for them to disinvest in our country, which puts the ones that are still looking for employment further and deeper into poverty. So our call for workers to put aside sectoral differences is as a result of that. Can I just also say, before Comrade Soli come in, Mapaila, just to add on what the General Secretary of Cosatu have said on the issue of the ANC conference, the move to unify. EsiXhoseni siye sithi abantu bazingela bephethe ityiwe. You can't be calling for unity and say, let us find a way of unifying, when you are going to raise your hand to be part of the leadership that is going to be a unifier. So you can't then be saying, let us collapse, if possible, the Nkosazana Zuma campaign, the Cyril Ramaphosa campaign, and find a neutral campaign. And in the neutral campaign, you are finding yourself in it. You are pronouncing that you are ready. It can't be you. A unifier puts his interest or her interest aside and say, in the interest of the organization, this is the type of leadership that we think is going to unify. And yourself as a unifier, you don't proclaim your interest in the process. You step aside. So strangely is that those that are calling for a unity and wanting to be unifiers, they are raising their hands in the process. So could that mean, should we read that if that process of unifying does not have your name, therefore that unity is no more? Are you going back to where you were? It's strange. Hence we are saying as a federation, the 1949 conference of the ANC resolution, or a tradition that was adopted, that a deputy president succeeds the president, must be a point of unity, a point of rallying unity in the movement. If they are to agree to start on that, and I think we'll be moving at least in a correct path of unity, but kungazingelwa kuphethe ityiwe. Inkosi.
Yeah, maybe let me start there from where Comrade Zingiswa, Deputy President of Cosatu, left. It's important that when we talk, we all embrace unity of our movement, unity on principles and policies, unity of purpose, in particular responding to the current challenges facing our movement. we are in a very difficult situation as a movement. And therefore our revolution is stagnating as a consequence of these difficulties that we are facing. And we need leadership across the movement. I want to endorse this framework that unity should not be self-serving, as it seems is the way it is couched. Self-interest groups opportunistically seizing the moment in the name of unity to want to steal the movement. And I think that it's an issue that will require further discussion. So we support unity, but not self-serving unity, opportunistic unity that will not serve the interests of our people. We want the movement to be saved. And that's why I endorse on behalf of the party, the framework that Comrade Zing is raising. But let me just also respond to some of the questions raised. The first one relates to the point by Stephen. First, it's marches. It's not march, one march. It's marches across the country. Maybe, Caesar, it's important that we distribute the activity list to the media while they're still here. It's marches across the country, and we're participating in all of these marches as the SACP in support of this Cosatu action. And we also want to say, we see this march as different from many other marches as the SACP. It's not just another march where we'll just march tomorrow and that's it. We see this march as signifying an important moment where now organized labor, at the core of which is Cosatu, have come out much more clearly to express its disdain and disgust with those who are stealing from our state and national resources for themselves and their families at the expense of the majority of our people. And therefore, this signifies a rolling action until we defeat the elite. It is in this case that, for instance, the SACP, we have, before I came here, which was part of my 15-minute delay or so, we're writing to our deployees in government, particularly at the national level, those who are ministers and others, that tomorrow the SACP is deploying them to work at the marches. We don't want the minister to go to cabinet tomorrow. They must apologize to go to cabinet tomorrow. We have given that instruction from the SACP headquarters. So all our members, even those in provinces, MECs, if you are working tomorrow, give apology to government. You'll see them. There's enough time. Tomorrow, we are saving our revolution. We are participating in these marches, joining organized labor and all the people of South Africa to defend our national sovereignty, to defend our state, to fight against corruption and state capture that is now being stolen. I see one question indicate that, do we think President Zuma is part of the elite? Okay. Actually, is the elite predator. The elite are those close to him, the Guptas and others inside the movement who have accepted this particular agenda. So we are dealing with a very serious matter. That is why post this march, things will not be the same in this country. And we don't want them to be the same as a consequence of this particular action. And because the SACP joined this action quite clearly and fully aware about the significance of this march. And we want to thank Cosatu for taking the initiative to bring its might where it is most required to save the workers of this country and their interests. With regard to the question that is raised about Comrade Makosi Kosa, I must say that I think she must be proud. She did all she could. I personally and fully understand her stance. I guess so with many of our comrades. But I think we must indicate that we truly sympathize with her. At the same time, it's important to make a call that we need all our fighters inside the movement today. Understanding a position, I mean, you'll know, her children were severely under threat. Her own life was under threat. She could go so far But it's important to make the call that at least our comrades must not leave the ship now. It's a critical moment. Between now and December, the ANC has proven its inability to self-correct. There's a court case. After a court case, comrades continue to convene meetings as if there's no court case. It's quite clear this movement is unable to save itself. So we need all comrades to remain inside the ship, not to come out and jump into the sea at this critical point. So we will sympathize with Comrade Makosi, but we want comrades who are in a similar situation like her to remain inside the ship and to fight right up to the last end, and particularly to save the coming conference of the African National Congress. There were issues that were raised around, for instance, in the statement, reclaiming the electoral mandate. One of the core mandates, of course, is accountability of government. And we've given enough reasons in the statement indicating the level of rot in government and our engagement through alliance processes jointly with Cosatu. And we're not getting good answers, including on the president himself, who is at the center of this corruption that is taking place in government, because he has been the buffer, the main protector, the main distributor, the main person who makes it possible. And there's enough evidence to this case in this regard. And therefore, it is important that we need accountable government, democratic government. You cannot have a parallel state and still continue to call yourself democracy. So it is in this case that what we are talking about, the ANC has to understand its own electoral mandate, which we in the alliance completely participated, including in crafting our own manifestos. And we feel that those manifestos are being betrayed in the manner that they have been implemented, with the level of corruption that is taking place in government. So it is in this regard that this statement is important. And we also want to see ANC members in their big numbers tomorrow joining the marches across the country. Thank you.
Thank you, Comrade DTS. I'm tempted to close. Let me see if is there anyone who's violently protesting against that. And there's no one.
Can we just get information as to where the marches will start from and end, please, tomorrow?
No, we'll give you that information. No, I think we have reached the end of this media briefing. We really appreciate your presence. Those who had requested one-on-one interviews, the leadership is available to conduct them now. Thank you again.
No, he's giving the marches season.
No,
Yes, we're printing.
we,
Oh, yeah, also printing. Yeah,
we have 13 marches in the country. In other provinces, we have 2. For example, in Mpumalanga, we have 2 marches, in Nelspruit and Middelburg. And then you have 1 big march in the KZN in Durban. You have the march in Polokwane. You have a march in Gauteng, which is going to go to the Premier's office. It will also go to the Chamber of Mine and the banks. You have a march in Northwest, where it will go to ESCOM. It will also go to and end at the legislature. In Mafikeng, you have a march in Kimberley, where it will also go to ESCOM, including to the Premier's office in Kimberley. You have a march in Free State, where it will also go to the Premier's offices. So in all these provinces, Comrade, we are going to have 13 marches, and we expect, as Comrade Soli Mapaila says, that members of the ANC have been mobilized. We've gone through the entire 9 provinces where we mobilized, including the civil society, members of the community, to support us in relation to those marches. And memorandums are handing over to the premiers. In other provinces where we have evidence in relation to corruption, the provinces are going to go to the police station and open criminal cases. For example, in the Northwest, there's a case around the so-called a company called it is led by the company that is leading the Telenzi ambulance. They've got clear corruption that Telenzi is running ambulances almost in all the provinces. So they want to know who owns those Telex ambulances. Because they've got evidence. They want to go to the police station or to the Hawks to open criminal case against those individuals. So we're expecting to follow up with those purchases and take what Cosatu will be doing jointly with the Communist Party. Thank you very much.
Oh, okay.
Observations you must make of how far ANC participates